Just a few days ago, we had the Reebok Answer 4s that we were looking at, and that was my very first time looking at them. And in that video, I made a point of saying, I know a little bit about the question mids, but I don't know much about the answers. And then here we are just a few days later, and one of the question mids drops on our laps. So it's great to have that one out there and take this as our video for today because, it's a shoe I've looked at a few times, but this one's got a little bit extra on it. Even the name has a little twist in it. And I'm sure there's a question on it that most people haven't actually thought about. But when I pose that question, you're going to be like, I never thought about that. I actually don't know the answer, or maybe you do know the answer, so I'll be glad to get into that with you guys today and also take a look back at an Air Force One that inspired me to take a look at this shoe today. And we're talking like 2 years ago, an Air Force One that I wish, it's one of those regrets I wish I'd gone for. And at the time I was like, maybe not, but then afterwards I was like, oh man, maybe I should have. And that shoe made me think of this shoe, and that's why I dived into these guys today. So we'll get into all that and all the branding and all the hits and the details on the shoe as well in today's video. As we take a look at the upcoming release of the Reebok Question Mid Motorsports. This is the Tokyo Butter 23 Sneaker Channel. Tokyo Butter 23 Sneaker Channelです。毎日アップするので毎日見てください。And every single day from Tokyo, Japan, I bring you content about upcoming sneaker releases, sneaker news, and sneaker reviews. And today, what's in spotlight is the upcoming release of the of the Reebok Question Mid 13 Motorsports or I3 Motorsports. And that's that question I was talking about at the start of this video. Have you thought about that? Do you know the answer to that? I was looking around trying to find out because it just looks like a 13. Everywhere I've seen it, it says Reebok Question Mid 13 Motorsports, but I'm sure it's meant to be I3 Motorsports. So I'm actually putting my money on that side of the table, and if I'm wrong, if there are 13 motorsports that Allen Iverson loves, like bikes and off-road and Formula One and anything like that, Indy 500, whatever, maybe there are 13 motorsports that he just totally loves, and it is a 13, but I'm pretty sure it's I3 Motorsports. And the reason for that is going back to those answer 4s. If you look right in the middle, I think it's in the middle of the lateral side, you can see there's an I with a 3 that echoes out of it. I for Iverson, and 3, the number that he wore most of his career. There was a time when he played with the number 1 for a little bit of it, but basically 3 is his number, if you know what I'm saying. And then back to today's shoe. So that I3 on those answer 4s makes me think that this shoe is the I3 Motorsports and not the 13 Motorsports, but I don't know that for sure. And if you do know that for sure, or if you have a difference of opinion, definitely crack it into the comments down below and let us all know, put us all out of our miseries to know what we're talking, which is it, 13 or I3? And getting into that, let's jump onto that other thing I said. It was an Air Force One that inspired me to take a look at this shoe, and it was this right here. This was one of my favorite first shoes at the channel. We're talking over 2 years ago now, I think. I've had the channel for 2.5 years. This was one of the first shoes in the first 6 months I looked at, and I was seriously thinking about getting them. I was like, nah, you know what? I got to be careful where I put my money. I'm not the wealthiest man in the world, so I need to choose carefully. And then I regretted it quite a lot. I'm not a huge fan. To be honest, I've never picked up shoes at anything but retail. And I don't know if I'd want to. I don't know if I'd want to pick up shoes from somewhere other than retail. It's a difficult one for me. I just prefer that sort of feeling the day it comes out, the day the shoe drops, trying your best to hit up the raffles or the places, the stores where they retail and stuff like that. But then getting them a day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, a week after, it feels somehow, I don't know, it takes a bit of the edge off. And with those motorsports, of course, I could dive into somewhere like StockX, for example, or somewhere like Worm here in Tokyo, or maybe Kicks Lab. And that's me talking back to the video from a few days ago when we went sneaker shopping here in Tokyo, Japan. And I actually sold a couple of sneakers at Worm rather than actually buying them. And so, because that money's sitting there, we can look forward to, getting some sneakers in hand and buying some sneakers again, in Tokyo, Japan. But that aside, let's park all that and get back to this. It was that motorsport from Air Force One, or the Air Force One Motorsports, that made me think about this shoe today. So I was really looking for a lot of those hits. If you look at those Air Force Ones, there's a ton of detailing on there, a ton of branding, and lots of different ways throughout the shoe. And that's what I was kind of expecting on this shoe. So first things first, expectations were high and they were pulled pretty low because this is a very simple black and silver shoe. There really isn't much more to it. As we say in the UK, it does exactly what it says on the tin. This is a black and silver shoe. And that's the second half of this video. I'm going to get into that right now as we'll go through the different parts on the shoe and the different details on there. And you can make your own decision as to whether this is a shoe you're interested in or want to go after. But there isn't, like I said, I just can't find anywhere on the shoe that really speaks to motorsports other than the fact that there's silver on half of the shoe, and that speaks to the metal behind kind of motorsports. Now with Allen Iverson, whose shoe this is, one of the greatest players of all time, probably ranked the greatest player under 6 foot tall of all time, one of the top 5 players never to have won a championship ring. We talked all about that in that Answer 4 video a few days ago, but it's his shoe, and when it comes to motorsports and him, it's all about bikes. That's his main sort of focus, but there might be others in there as well, and that kind of metal, you know, the chains or whatever, the metal element of biking, you know, the handlebars, the brake pedals, whatever, they're all metal basically, and chromed, and that's where the silver comes in on this shoe. It's all about that chrome and that metal feel. But we're going to start high and work our way down below. I have one last question for you guys about the branding on the lace loops, which we'll get into in a minute. But basically, let's start high up on the top of the tongue, where you've got a solid black top to the tongue, and hopefully you can see that here, and we'll get into the branding in a second, because also I hope you see on the green screen as well is that the bottom half of the tongue is in a mesh material, but solid black all the way through. But at the very top you've got that O in black on there. Now to me, something's a bit funky about what's going on in this picture here, because I always think of that O and then the branding, the Reebok branding in the corner is representing a Q. Now what we'll do is we'll quickly flip to the back of the shoe, to the heel and the top half, and you can really see that clearly at the top half of the heels on the back. You've got that silver O, and then in the bottom right corner of it you've got the Reebok branding that gives you that feeling of a Q for question. And then if we go back to the tongues, it's kind of like, it's not really there, you know, the O's over on one side and the branding's kind of not where you'd expect it to be to make it into a Q. The O itself is black on black for the tongue, but the branding is silver on black for the tongue. So there's a bit sort of offset strangeness going on the tongues that you wouldn't normally see. Now what you do usually see is that it's not right set in the middle and it's offset to the side, so that is still there, but the actual colouring and the placement is a little bit odd, if you ask me. And here's the question that I don't know for sure. I'm going to put up a picture and be zoomed in as best as I can, and what I'm talking about is the lace loops. The question mid's often on the lace loops. That's where they put a little extra design. There's 6 of them, and it's perfect for the word Reebok, and I'm putting my money on this saying Reebok black on black, so it's very hard to see because black lettering on a black background. But it could say something else. I can't imagine what it would say. Let's see, Allen Iverson. Allen's 5 letters, Iverson's 7, so it wouldn't be either of those. But there's something, you know, imprinted there, but so hard to see on this particular pair and this particular picture. So if you know for sure what's written into the lace loops, definitely tell us all in the comments down below. And then coming off those black on black lace loops, we get down into the middle part of the shoe, in the midfoot, where you see that silver branding which finishes off the top part of the upper. And if you look closely at that top part of the upper, you can see it's a very smooth leather feel to it. And then when we get down into the bottom half of the upper, the silver part of the shoe, you can see it's a much more textured feel to that silver part of the shoe running around the bottom part of the upper there. And then you get down from that and into the midsole itself. Now I had a bit of a query about what they're doing with the inserts on the midsole. You can see the midsole is front to back all silver, but they have those 2 inserts front and back for those air units, or the hexalite air units on there, but they seem a little less deep to me. I think what they've done is they've covered up a bit of silver in there to give them a more solid feel, a harder feel, a more metallic feel. So usually you'd have a bit more translucence going on into those inserts, but not on these guys. And then it's not too far to go around from that to the back of the heel to see at the bottom of the heel. We already looked at the top of that Q that I talked about, and at the bottom you've got the 3 for Allen Iverson's number. And then flipping these guys upside down to have a look at the outsole, you can see it's in that translucent or semi-translucent black or grey, and to finish off the whole shoe, and that really fits with the rest of it. But basically, like I said, back out looking at the whole shoe, there's no real hits of motorsport on here. It's just basically a black and a silver shoe. So when I'm coming from those Air Force Ones that are splattered front to back and like motorsport history and culture, I was expecting something like that in this, and it's just basically a 2-tone black and a silver shoe. And if you want to read motorsport into that, knock yourself out. But for me, it was like, you know what, I was expecting a little bit more, but that's just my take on it. And apparently people like that. They like that it's not all about the hype at this channel. It's not just me sort of pushing shoes and saying this is a great shoe, even when I don't think so. This one for me, a little bit subpar, but maybe that's because my expectations were too high rather than the shoe itself. So with that being said, that's it for today. Just wrapping this one up, the second Reebok in 7 days, which is kind of unusual for me, and wrapped in all that as well was a trip to the Tokyo sneaker store. So hopefully you saw that video and appreciated that too. For now though, time for me just to sign off, finish up this video, and do what I do at the end of every single video, which is thank you guys for checking out the content and remind you I do this every single day. And that means that you are guaranteed to see me tomorrow.